Welcome to the Inspirational Leaders Series, a collection of short interviews with sharp, impactful people that I know and respect because the business world needs more refreshing people like them. My name is Teresa Brazen. I am a leadership and executive coach for design leaders and leadership teams, and I help them to elevate the impact of design and the stature of design in their organizations. And today I am really excited to have a chat with Mary Piontkowski, who is a personal friend and also a client. She is VP and head of product at Cisco Meraki. And I worked with Mary many, many years ago at the design firm called Adaptive Path. And more recently, I've been working with her team and led an offsite for them. And I had the privilege of seeing up close and personal what an amazing leader Mary is. There are a lot of things that her team really appreciates about her, that she is able to savvily position design as a strategic necessity and differentiator with executives and partners. She is open to different opinions, but she also knows how to draw the lines when they need to be drawn. She is also someone who knows how to create psychological safety for her team and very, very committed to quality. Those are just a few of the lovely things about Mary as a leader, and you are going to learn more in this conversation. Mary, thank you so much for making time so that we can unpack and learn more about what you have learned about leadership.
Yeah, it's so great to be here, Teresa. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you for all the hard and amazing work that you did with my team over the past few months.
You are so welcome. And let's dive into talking about leadership. So I'm always interested in the early experiences that shape leaders, like the things, sometimes those are challenges, sometimes those are like amazing opportunities. And I'm curious about, for you, if there is, an experience or two that you think of as formative for your leadership that really shaped how you're leading today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there are so many, and many of them are mistakes that have helped me move in a better or newly inspired direction. Well, I'll tell you about one story, and it's a relationship story. And so a few jobs ago, I was kicking butt, doing, I think in retrospect, a pretty decent job, building a team that was going to have strategic impact. The team was really informing service design from the ground up. And it was truly an exciting time. And relationships, I was building relationships as I went, and I would gravitate toward certain relationships because it felt maybe more satisfying. We shared a common approach. I'll also say that I was really eager to move fast. I had a lot of ideas about how design could shape the product strategy and how we could, I wanted to move. I wanted to prove value. I wanted to prove my value. I wanted my team to feel that value, and plus it's satisfying, right? To keep moving. What I realized is I had some blind spots, and so there were some key people who I was leaving behind. We didn't necessarily have as much fun. We had a slightly different approach, but they were really critical people to have buy-in, and to move along on this journey together. So I asked my boss, the CEO at the time, I talked to my boss about what I wanted, and I was really looking for more responsibility. I was looking for a promotion, and he was pretty favorable. He could see the impact that my team was having. But upon 360 feedback, it became clear that the folks that I didn't bring along, the blind spots were really going to hold me back. They didn't feel great about how their voice was left behind. And I realized this is going to be a real issue for me. And it was. I had to slow down. I had to take the time to kind of rebuild some of the bridges here. And, I didn't get promoted in that role, it was hard work. But I was able to take that experience to my next job and my next job. And, relationships are just, I'll just kind of double click on relationships. They're everything. Really, they're at the core of everything that we do, all of our successes, the quantity of them and the quality of them. So, I think what I really walked away with was, and I care deeply about relationships, but I need to be really thoughtful about, slowing down, bringing the right people along, and, being in it for the team. I think, one more thing that I'd like to share is, there's a ton of great literature out there around relationships and trust. Trust is so core to this concept. Great book that probably many of you have read, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, a leadership fable. But one of my favorite metaphors that I think about all the time is Brené Brown's jar of trust. And I carry this around with me in all of my relationships now. So even between us, Teresa, we have this this jar of trust. It's filled with marbles. It actually is filled with marbles, I think. And everything that we do, we're either adding to the jar or we're taking away. And so when we did our offsite together, we filled the jar really full. And we probably took a few out when I rescheduled with you for a few times, or when I refused to do the circle outside of the offsite. But I really think that I've embraced this and other concepts around relationships so deeply, because it's just relationships and trust are at the core of our successes.
Wow, that's beautiful. And it's funny, I immediately thought of something I witnessed you do in the offsite, which was, there was a moment where I saw you were noticing and paying attention to who was contributing in a core group of people that we were working with. And you were intentionally asking for input from people who weren't as vocal, which I think is just like a small way of like making sure that the relationships that are important to you are all being nurtured, and because people show up in different ways. And especially, I know you think about this, but it's very easy to only pay attention to the loudest voices in the room. But often we discover some of those quieter voices are actually really critical voices too.
Yeah, absolutely. Opening up space, creating safe, inclusive environments. I mean, that's just a whole important topic on its own, but really, it does come down to the relationships between all of us, and ensuring that, everyone has that opportunity to connect with others.
Well, and so I want to like keep going with this theme of relationship and talk about influence, because we both know influence is incredibly important for leadership. If you're going to enroll folks into a vision, which I know you are often doing, you have to influence up, down, and across. What have you learned about influence?
There's a lot.
That's a big chunk.
I mean, I love the topic of influence and just all of the behavioral psychology and ethical choices that we make about influence. I would say that some of the things, I guess, that I would share about influence is that a lot of it has to do with intention. There's probably several questions that you would ask me, and I'm very intentional about how I go about my work. As designers and creatives, we do, like, our emotions do drive us to some degree, but I'm pretty intentional when it comes to influence and other things. And I would say, like, three things are coming to mind for me, and I'm thinking about also in related to my current role and successes in my current role. First, having a vision that folks can rally around is, I think, the first thing that I would talk about. And wherever you go, your vision is going to be different. So just because you created a great vision at one company with one design org, you can't just pick that up and plop it into another org. So really taking time to get to know the people, bringing them along, listening, being curious about the space, and coming up with a vision that organization is going to be excited about, and that organization is going to move along with you together. That's going to be really important when it comes to influencing, because already you've got all of these people who are moving with you. Mm-hmm. The second thing out of three, because there's always got to be three, is hiring and building a team that does great work, hiring talented people. Because again, at the end of the day, what we're putting out into the world, the outcomes that we're driving, are going to be received and seen. And if we're showing results, we're going to start opening up that permission to do even more and to ask for the next thing. I think about, like, related to this, I think about the concept of sponsorship, and that seems to be coming up a lot in various conversations right now. And I almost think it's like an invisible thing. If you're out there doing great work, delivering, there are outcomes that people can see. You're going to have people who are, sponsoring you, talking about you when you're not there, and showcasing your work and singing your praises. So anyway, that second one is really about hiring a team who can do great work and deliver those outcomes. And then the third one that I would say is the relationships. I think where we started, I'm very, very, very intentional. And it's not just that one story where I was burned, that taught me this lesson. I think we all learn this through all of our, personal and professional experiences. We're always growing as humans who interact together. But I'm very intentional about stakeholder mapping, influence mapping, who should we engage to make this work stronger? Who should we engage to get sign off for the budget? Who can influence the person who's going to sign off on the budget? There's just such a rich network of people who we need to navigate through, and we can map it out and be super intentional. I'm also inspired by BJ Fogg in behavior design, and other behavioral psychology scientists like Dan Ariely and Richard Cialdini. Like, I can eat this stuff up. I could talk to you. I could do a few more interviews just about that alone. But there's so many subtle things that we can do when we're showing up with people to influence, from a smile, to all kinds of other things that neurologically can aid you in influencing the ethical things and the outcomes that you want to drive.
So you've got vision, and I think what was interesting about, there's a nuance in the way you talked about vision, which is it's like vision that is tailored to the organization, and I think the implication there is like tailored in the sense of, it's something that it's possible for them to get behind and get excited about. You still have to do the like relationship work and the hiring work, but this feels like a vision that this particular community could rally behind, which requires knowing that community a little bit, which goes back to the relationship, et cetera. And then there's, hiring people who can bring that vision to life. And I think there's an implication there of like, they also will have the opportunity, they'll be set up for success, basically, which is something that drives and motivates people. Like, if they were hired, they're capable of supporting you in that vision. And then the relationship piece, and you're talking about not just like working on relationships, but actually intentional really is the right word. It's like thinking about the landscape and then identifying who are the people that are going to be really important to make this thing come to life. That sound right?
Yeah, it does. I would say with the second one, it does sound right. And I would say the outcomes that you're driving, like really delivering, it's like you've got the people in place to do the great work, but like the organization, you might also have to promote it. You need to make sure that it's seen, right? So it's those outcomes that are really important. And yeah, I think you've got it. Just the third one, the network of relationships. So we're establishing a vision, and we've got a stakeholder network and influence map to get them aligned with the vision. But then there's also thinking ahead about like what next? What next? You know, there's the next stage that I want to take my team to, or like, okay, we're moving forward on that vision, and now there's this opportunity to have greater org-wide impact by showing up and doing these new things. You know, there's something about always being a few steps ahead and mapping out that intention as you go.
Yeah, so keeping it like thinking over the broader realm of time too. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm let's now double click on I don't know why the double click is the theme of this conversation. We're going to keep double clicking, zooming out, double clicking, zooming out. What did you say?
Let's lean in to the double click.
All right. We're going to lean into the double click. So I have had, as I said in the intro, the opportunity to witness how inspired and motivated your team is. And there's, the future is very bright for your team, but I know that a piece of that is about how you are showing up as a leader. And so I'm curious about any secrets you have to share around like enrolling them, and motivating them, as in the way that you're leading.
It would be great to recruit a few of them and ask them and integrate their feedback. I hope they would share some of what I will share. Yeah, a few things come to mind here, several. I mean, maybe I'll try to keep it to 3 again. But I think one thing that I believe is extremely important to teams who are motivated and engaged. We use that word a lot. We have this engagement pulse survey that we send out every quarter, and is connecting the dots between the work and the strategy. So there's all kinds of exciting things happening at Cisco right now. I mean, you heard us talk about just the transformation and the networking part of the business. We've got these big conferences, Cisco Live, and our leaders are talking about this really, really cool, inspiring stuff. And I want every person on my team to understand what we're doing, how what they're doing ladders up to that strategy. And it can be hard sometimes. Like, honestly, 3 years ago, it was really hard to do because I think we were all, this whole part of the business was trying to figure it out. It's a little bit easier now, but it can also be easy to just get stuck in the like daily grind and forget how meaningful it is to produce something that is going to help make a bigger thing happen. So I think that's one. I think the second one, which you've probably seen, I show up as my authentic self, and I think it's really, really, really important for everyone to do it. It's a lot easier being ourselves than trying to be someone else. And I don't know about you, but I've learned this throughout my career. I spent a lot of time trying to be that other cool, Mary P. But, I found that if I can just show up as myself, sometimes I'm a little long-winded, whatever it may be. Sometimes I might, you might strike a chord and I might start tearing up in this conversation. Just being ourselves is so valuable. And I really think that our teams connect with us, and they also feel like they can show up as their authentic selves if we do this. And I was lucky, to find Meraki. I mean, Cisco Meraki, Cisco in general, but Cisco Meraki in particular. When I interviewed, I remember, I had a section that talked about my values, and I had a few years before done like a Brené Brown values exercise. And I talked about kindness and courage and curiosity. And there was something about excellence in there. And it almost like one-to-one mapped to Meraki values. And I guess like the point in bringing that up is that if we can find places where we share values, that gives us permission to show up as our authentic selves, and then it opens it up for our teams to do the same. So should I go to the third thing, or do you want to?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. There's one, I guess it's related to that last point that I would like to share, that I think that it's true about, so I shared about how my values map to Cisco Meraki's values, but it's also true that the values are, I mean, I just think they're strong. They're so strong regardless of my values. And people, like how people show up every day cross-functionally in product and engineering and support and marketing. I just have to give the organization a plug, because it's a huge reason why my team is motivated. It's not just because I'm, doing all these things, Mary, the leader. No, it's what we're all doing, what my leaders are doing, but really across the organization. The culture, not my favorite way to talk about it, but the values are so strong and they're practiced every day and how people show up. So whether my team is working on the UX team or they're off with their product teams, there's really, there's something about that, really that kindness and curiosity and courage. I think that they're feeling, well, I was going to say 24/7, but they're not really working 24/7. Day.
I mean, super interesting. Like I love this. So the first thing you're talking about is something I think is super important for leaders. And I think you do this for sure, which is helping people to really understand the connection between what they are doing and the vision of the organization in as concrete as possible a way. So the vision doesn't stay abstract, but it feels personal and meaningful. And 100% that drives motivation when people are, that we know this from neuroscience too, when people are engaged in meaningful work and they experience multiple successes in doing meaningful work, their motivation just goes up and up and up and up and up. And it's really interesting. So your authenticity, this is a theme that's come up in a lot of these interviews that I've done, of like, especially when leaders like you model, when you're willing to get teared up in a conversation because something really affects you, in a meaningful way. It makes it safe for other people to show up as themselves too. And at the end of the day, we're just a community of people all working together on something. So I think, as someone else said to me once, like, you burn a lot of calories trying to be people who you aren't. And that energy can be used to create great things together, as opposed to, dividing yourself. So I appreciate that that's something you think about and that you try to model. And then the values piece. Oh, go ahead.
Well, that would be an interesting weight loss approach. I would pretend I was someone else for a day to shed a few pounds after the holidays.
And then values. I mean, it's interesting because you talked about it in both your number 2 and your number 3. So like relationship between personal values and your organization, that's part of what drew you to where you are, and actually seeing evidence of values practiced. I think that was the really meaty piece in that. Awesome. I want to take it. I have a totally different question, and my last one for this conversation, which is, it's around the topic of energy management. So I know, having been in your environment, that it's a fast-paced environment. It might be corporate world, but it kind of feels like a startup even still. Like there's just a lot of movement. There's a lot happening fast. And you and many other leaders are, probably pummeled with all kinds of things, being pulled in lots of different directions. So I'm wondering how you manage your energy so that you can show up as the excellent leader that you are.
Well, guess what? I'm intentional about it. I'm very, very intentional about it, how I'm showing up, where I'm drawing energy from, kind of keeping tabs on the energy level. I can tell by how I'm showing up and interacting with folks. I can kind of gauge where I'm at. And I think, carving out the time for the strategic work is critical because I find a lot of energy in product strategy and really, thinking about, a lot of the left brain challenging problems that we need to work through, and how can we use design to do that in addition to driving consistency and elegant and beautiful product experiences. So carving out time is important. So I think like the first thing I will say is I am very intentional about time, like when and where and how. And I've overthought this, and I've like read a million books on it, and it's come down to a simple thing that I've accepted is that I do really great work at 5 a.m. and I'm a morning person, and I mean, that would be my workout time or shortly after that. And it actually took a lot of, I don't know, like processing for me to accept the fact that, okay, I'm not going to work out then. I'm going to have to work out later in the day, which I don't like, but I need this deep thinking time. Nobody's going to bother me. And I can get, in 1 hour, I can get like 5 hours of work done. And I'm not kidding. Put me in front of a computer at night and just forget it. So I think that's the first thing. I think how, when, where I do my work. The second one that I think is really important is self-care. And I just think, I mean, is this easy? This is not easy. And I think it's so important to talk about, even though it's, seems really obvious. I don't know. And sometimes like a little, I don't know, out there. Or like not purely logical or I don't know, like important. But I think it's critical. I think it's so important to make sure that we're getting sleep, that we're exercising, that we're eating good food, that we're eating food. Food is fuel for the brain. And that there's some fun aspects to our life. And I just think all of this is really hard. I mean, every week there's some type of calibration that I need to do. I'm like, oh gosh, now my knee. I just got back on that bandwagon and now my exercises, or, whatever it may be, sleep. I'm just not, it's harder to get the hours, but I absolutely need sleep to function. And I think we all do, we're human. So just, I don't know, for me, I just accept the fact that it's going to take work and it's never going to be perfect, but I don't lose sight of it. Mm-hmm. And then relationships are the third.
Full circle.
Energy management. But there's this cool thing actually that I just learned about that I'll mention, but I think like who I spend time with. So when we're at work, we have to spend time with all kinds of people, and we do. We've got our stakeholder maps, our influence maps. We've got to get work done on, whatever, X, Y, and Z, and we can't control everyone who we're working with, but we can identify individuals in the org in our personal lives who we draw a ton of energy from. Mm-hmm. And I do this at work. I do this. Mm-hmm. I do a few intentional things. Like every week, I make sure that I'm meeting someone new, like regardless of anything. And I've done that every week since I've joined. But there's another thing that I do is just kind of scan my week for the energy moments, to help ensure if I can see an opportunity to infuse my week with something that might be missing, I will. There's a couple people. There's one person in particular that comes to mind, a person who worked at Meraki when I joined, and she's bopped around. She's been doing different things throughout Cisco. And I was like, oh no, I draw so much energy from her. Like we're creators, we're stimulators, we're connectors. And every time we would, every time we talk, we figure out something that we can do that's rather impactful in the org. And we have been able to influence together some really, really interesting outcomes. There's another person who I can think of who I'm always like, what are we going to talk about? Do I have anything to talk to him about this, this week or this month? And when we meet, he's just so calm and grounding. And I just leave with something. I leave with that every time. And I think he leaves with hope and energy. So there's just something about finding these connections that really help me manage my energy. The thing I want to tell you about, it's a horrible word, and I'm going to try to say it. It sounds like Klingon, but it's called ORSC coaching. And I think it stands for like organization, relationship, systems coaching. Do you know about this?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I just learned about this, and it kind of helped explain what's going on. Like what I was just talking about has just been a little bit, I don't know, philosophical for me. And then I was like, oh wait, this is what's happening. Where every relationship, like every two people have a relationship that is like a third identity. And the deeper your relationship goes, or if you really have that connection, that relationship, that third entity can be so powerful in an organization. And I think that's what's happening with these other two folks. With the first person I spoke to, like, it's not like if we showed up as two people who didn't know each other as well, like, yeah, we would do our things, but that third entity really pushes things so much further. Same with the other example. We show up actually as a more balanced leadership team when I show up with a person in the second example. So anyway, thanks. We have a entity too.
We do. We need to give it a name. I have to mull on that, or make it a character. Oh my goodness, there's so much good stuff in there. I just want to recap because I think these are really good tips. So one is knowing yourself, knowing actually what your natural energy arcs are. So you identified 5 a.m. as when I am like focused, I can get stuff done, I'm clear-headed, and I'm going to maximize that time. And you even like moved your exercise to a different time so you can use it for deep thinking time, which is great because everybody's, we'll call it, your energy arc is different. So it's good to know what yours is. And then the self-care piece, I just, in neuroscience, they talk about body budget, which is like basically a number of things that affect the chemistry in your body, how your brain works. It basically affects like how you experience life and how you show up in it, and sleep and eating, your diet. Even you talked about, you didn't say this exactly, but like stimulus, having new stimulus in your life is another thing that affects the chemistry of your body and how your brain works. So you're talking about being really intentional about like how you maintain the system, And then you're also talking about systems in terms of relationships. And I love this, the third entity, and this idea of like looking at your week and making sure, if I understood you correctly, that you have moments with people that are relationship oriented in this case, where you're going to get energy because you need that through a week. And you're clear about certain people, that just sort of naturally happens at another level. Super interesting, Mary.
Yeah, really, really well said. Very concise and well said. And I just think the more people that we get to know, I think about my one person a week, you never know who you're going to find that with, And there's new opportunities all throughout your org. So I just think it's super fascinating, and it's hopefully we'll be inspired and it will help you find your energy.
Yeah. Well, and I think your tip there is stay curious about people and keep being open to new relationships and new people. Oh my goodness, Mary, we could go on. And I sadly, I feel like I should end this interview for now. But it's really rich. I really appreciate you sharing your stories and what you've learned and how you're thinking about the work that you do and how you lead. So thank you.
Thank you. It's really fun just to take some time out and think about it and talk about it. So yeah, again, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
Our next collaboration.
Yeah. And for the rest of you who are listening in, if you are interested in hearing more interviews with really interesting leaders like Mary, you can find more of them on my website at teresabrazen.com. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. Thanks all for listening.